Tableau portal in 60 minutes or less. Welcome to everybody here in sunny Las Vegas and to our live streamers from around the world. This session is being broadcast live, and I do want to welcome everyone here in the room and beyond in the internet. I'm going to date myself a little bit, but as I was thinking about Tableau Conference, I remembered this really funny article written by the humorist Art Buchwald in 1974. And Art Buchwald talks about the 6-minute Louvre. And the Louvre is that iconic extraordinary museum in Paris, France. Has anybody actually been to the Louvre? And I'm pretty sure, oh wow, that's impressive. Well, then you know that it's absolutely massive. And it, of course, houses one of the greatest collections of art ever created by humankind. And Art talks about, this is actually a play on how 20 years earlier, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile in 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds to be exact. So Art Buchwald writes about Peter Stone, who breaks the 6-minute Louvre. He actually manages to take it all in. He shaves 20 seconds off of his time by remembering that they don't charge admission on Sundays and he can run right in. And he actually takes in the entire Louvre in under 6 minutes. So what does that have to do with Tableau Conference and our session today? Well, if you think about it, we're in this absolutely massive facility here, the Convention Center for Tableau Conference. And of course, it houses the world's greatest collection of visual art created from data. But what I think it really has to do with is, if you know anything about Tableau Conference and what it takes to take in even just a few of the treasures here, you really have to move. And so I hope everybody wore their sneakers today, because we are going to be running through some fantastic content as we build our masterpiece, a custom Tableau portal. I'm Gordon Rose. This is Ron Duggar. We'll introduce ourselves here if you'll let us. This is my 7th Tableau conference, 6 years and change at Tableau. I love to play tennis. I'm a singer, at least I try. And I'm based in Greater Philadelphia, PA. And yes, I do root for the Eagles. Yeah. We used to have a saying in Philadelphia that where would freeze over before the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. Well, I kind of have to believe that all the unfortunate folks who wound up down there are now Eagles fans and very grateful for the cooler conditions these days. Ron, did you want to take a second to say hi?
You bet. Thank you, Gordon. So again, my name is Ron Duggar. I've worked at Tableau for 4.5 years. This is my 5th Tableau conference. Thank you all for joining us. There's a lot of people who've been here for their first conference, so we really appreciate that. Fun fact about me, I am a twin. My twin brother's name is John, so Ron and John. Not only are we twins, we're identical twins, and today is our birthday. Thank you, thank you. You can see a picture of my lovely family. There is one person missing from that is me, and I would be the anomaly. I've got 3 beautiful little girls and a great wife who really knows how to handle them. I'm based out of Little Rock, Arkansas. I love basketball, really any sports, and Dallas Mavericks are my team. Anybody from Dallas? All right. And this, have you guys seen the Ron John Surf Shop? I just think it's ironic that we're in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we got a guy from Little Rock with no ocean around with a surf shop. I'm thinking there's an opportunity there somewhere. We got to figure this out. All right, Gordon, let's talk about these developer tools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ron. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ron and John. But Ron, I thought we were twins because we were wearing the same shirt. Oh, no, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, join.
We're a set of 3 twins. That's kind of cool. Anyway, obviously, the developer platform at Tableau has really expanded enormously over the past several years. Again, having been at Tableau for a while, we used to kind of discourage the word developer. You were a content creator, not a Tableau developer. Well, today, there really is such a thing as a Tableau developer, and I have a feeling that you're here today because you are one of them or you plan to become one of them. You can develop around Tableau in very exciting ways in terms of automating, extending Tableau, integrating advanced analytics, and of course, what we're here to talk about today, and that is embedding Tableau. If you plan to continue on this developer track, there are a couple of sessions still to be held that I can recommend attending. One of them would be a voyage through Embedded Analytics. That's going to be hosted by our colleague Madhav. It's a fantastic session. I do recommend it highly. And then embedding Tableau and ACID data. We'll touch on that briefly, but ACID data is one of the more exciting new capabilities in Tableau, and yes, you can include it in an embedded Tableau solution. And there you have the opportunity to go into it in much greater detail. Here's what we're going to cover today. First of all, I guess we better kind of define what we mean by an embedded Tableau portal, and we'll really kind of drive that home with a brief demonstration of an example. And then we'll talk a little bit about why would you want to embed analytics in the first place, and then we'll start building it. We'll touch on the three key components. The first would be implementing single sign-on. The idea that when people log into your web application, they shouldn't have to log in a second time to Tableau in order to gain access to the embedded visualizations. Then we'll touch on the REST API. Specifically, we'll look at how you would use the REST API to create some kind of an ability to discover available content, a menu. Of course, the REST API is capable of much, much more, but this is a very common use of it, so that'll be our second key component. And then finally, we'll embed the viz. We'll use the JavaScript API to make it a part of the overall application, and then build some really kind of cool use cases around it. Now, how many people here in this room work for a company that would value, say, stickier customer relationships? How about a show of hands? Would that be beneficial? How about the ability to really differentiate your product? How about more efficient relationships with your partners and your suppliers? Let me tell you, hey, how about increased profits? Who's going to complain about that? Let me tell you a brief story that sort of encompasses all of those. Again, dating myself a little bit, several years ago, I had the opportunity early on at Tableau to work with one of the largest financial services companies in the world, a very innovative, forward-looking organization. They had, as a customer, one of the largest internet companies in the world. And their stock trades as one of the so-called FANG stocks, so one of the really, really big internet companies. So naturally, an important customer. And the relationship was great. The 401k plans, the retirement planning, and so forth that were provided to this company were outstanding. There was just one kind of little grain of sand in the relationship that got in the way, and that was that when this customer went to the portal, they couldn't quickly and easily see who was participating, how are the plans doing, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a little bit of a sticking point. So this financial services company, being very forward-looking, nobody was doing this back when they did it several years ago. They meticulously built out one of the most impressive Tableau infrastructures I have ever seen and embedded Tableau into their application, creating an embedded Tableau portal. And you can guess how this story turns out. It cemented the relationship. They secured that customer relationship, and in the process of doing it, they developed assets that they could in turn share with every other single customer. So this story really had an impact in the millions and millions of dollars. But your embedded Tableau story doesn't have to be about millions of dollars. It can be about just putting analytics where maybe your internal users are already going. How about in Salesforce? Or how about in SharePoint? How about in an internal HR portal? Embedded analytics can add value in so many places and in so many different ways. So I think we're going to have an opportunity to do that. And as I said, we're going to be doing a little bit of running. In fact, you might say, are you really going to build a portal in 60 minutes? We're not going to hand code it. Obviously, we don't have time for that. But it's more like a cooking show. Maybe Ron and I kind of pre-measured a couple of ingredients and set things up so that within the 60 minutes, we really could show you exactly how to build an embedded Tableau portal. So what is one anyway? Well, it's really very simple. It's just an application where Tableau, the embedded analytics, play anywhere from a strong supporting role all the way up to a starring role. So here, the city of Boston says that they manage data. They manage the city using data. And when they want to share that with someone, they do it through an embedded Tableau portal. So it's a very strong supporting role for those embedded analytics. Now, Ron and I work with literally hundreds of customers where embedded Tableau is the star. It's the business. Anonymous benchmarking. It's a great example of how many, many companies out there aggregate data, turn it into cool Tableau visualizations, and then monetize it through an embedded Tableau portal. And then finally, here's a screenshot of the portal we're going to be building today. And what I'd like to do is give you a very brief demonstration of that so you can sort of see what we're going to be up to. And on top of that, I think get a good sense of the art of the possible. And the only thing I kind of have to work out here is my Alt-Tab skills. Okay, so here we are at a fictitious website for a company called Industrix. Now, like most commercial applications, we need to log in order to gain access to the sensitive content, so let's do that. We'll log in as Joe, and this actually has us already touching on the first key point of integration, which is single sign-on. Namely, that we shouldn't have to log on to Tableau again in order to gain access to all the cool visual content we're going to have access to. There should also be an easy way for us to kind of discover what visualizations are available to us. And here what we've done is we've simply used the Tableau REST API to go to Tableau server and say, please give me a thumbnail for all the visualizations that our user Joe has the permission to see. So in good Tableau fashion, now we have a visual way of discovering our visual content. So let's go ahead and click through. And finally, we will see, of course, the embedded visualization. Now, here I would like to point out that you really can't tell. I mean, if we weren't all tabloids here in the room together, we wouldn't necessarily know that Tableau is the technology behind this visualization. And on top of that, you really can't tell where the visualization begins and ends and where the website begins and ends. We call it sort of like white labeling. It's just completely seamlessly integrated into the look and feel, the body of the portal. Now, we don't stop there, of course. We use the JavaScript API to get it here, but the JavaScript API is very powerful and lets us create a much richer experience for the user around the embedded visualization. So for instance, in just very simple terms, if we were working with this, and of course, you know, in Tableau, you can select something, and then if you so choose, you can have that drive some additional behavior on the viz, which we just did here. Now, using the JavaScript API, we have the ability to let the user just in one single click bring the viz back to its original state or clear the selections. So what's going on here, just to paint the picture, is the Industrix developer has put those buttons there. They didn't come from Tableau. And you get to make your custom portal look exactly the way you want it to. This is just an example. So the developer put a little bit of JavaScript behind there, and when we click that, sure enough, we drove the behavior of the viz. We caused it to do something. You can get a lot more sophisticated. How many people, no matter how beautiful the Tableau viz is that you create, your users come to you and say, hey, by the way, could I just have the data, please? I want to bring it to an Excel, and I want to do what I want to do with it. I used to resist that. I used to say, no, you've got Tableau. You don't need the raw data. I've given up. People want the raw data. So in the JavaScript API lets you, in just a simple call, export the data. So here we could expose a little form that exposes the options for all of that API call, and then we can trigger on a submit button a download of the data from the viz. How cool is that? And of course, the possibilities are limitless. In fact, this I think is really quite a selling point. You can fully embed, let me just close that there, you can fully embed web editing into your portal. That's pretty powerful. If you so choose, you can effectively give people Tableau Desktop in your web application. And if you are monetizing the embedding, you can charge more for it. A lot of our customers do. It's a value-added service. It's kind of that good, better, best. And at the best level, you're giving your customers full editing capabilities. And what does that do? It means they don't call you to make the changes. They can make them themselves. They can make the vizzes look exactly the way they want to, and they have not left your portal. They are still your customer inside your portal. Let's just jump back, and we're going to take one more second here with this. I want to bring us over to, actually 2 seconds into this visualization. Sometimes people ask about, well, you know, I think about I'm doing some custom development with embedding. I may as well just hand code the whole thing in D3. Obviously, this is a person with a lot of time on his or her hands. But what we do enable, because of the power of the JavaScript API, is if you have special purpose vizzes, say, written in D3, we can communicate between, say, that visualization and Tableau. Notice how as we interact with D3, we are in turn driving again the behavior of the Tableau viz back to our menu just ever so briefly. let's bring up this last viz, and I want to show you two things here. One is another very, very common use case, and that is the ability to do write back. Now, Tableau promises that we will never modify your data. You can always trust Tableau with your data. We will never change it. But in an embedded scenario, you can easily introduce write back. So let's go ahead. Let's click on the Edit Order button. And we see that there seems to be, interestingly enough, somehow we were able to detect what all of the individual orders were. Yep, the JavaScript API will let us interrogate a viz and learn about it on the fly, programmatically. And it turns out that also when you interact with the viz, let's click on, kind of notice the order number 7693. We're going to click on 8017. Ooh, that's kind of cool. You click on the viz, we can detect that the user clicked on the viz and then do something else in our web application. That's not a bad capability. And now let's go ahead and make a change here. We'll click Submit. Boom, did you see that change? We didn't have to do a page refresh. Kind of a single page application experience, all using the Tableau JavaScript API. Last thing up here, because we want to spend time on the building, not the demonstrating, but I think it is important to see the art of the possible. We'll kind of finish here with, wow, you can embed Ask Data and make that a seamless part of your embedded Tableau portal as well. So we're going to be talking about doing all of these things, and actually Ron's going to come up here. Actually, we talked about running, so I'm going to pass the baton off to Ron. He is going to run the next leg of this race. He's taller, he's got longer legs, that's a good thing. Let's get back over here, and thank you, Ron, for taking us down on that next leg.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, everybody, did that make sense? Yes. All right, so now that we know what an embedded portal is and what it looks like, why do our customers embed analytics into their applications? Gordon and I we're on a team at Tableau. We are focused on external-facing analytics. So our clients are embedding Tableau into applications. That's the only thing we work on. We see clients from every line of business. Everybody has a specific thing they're trying to accomplish, but we see the reasons why they're embedding analytics will fit generally in these 5 categories. You're trying to create a customized experience for your users, and Tableau's APIs give you the ability to do that. You're trying to share your data. Gordon talked about a client who was able to monetize and anonymize data and provide a service for clients is a multi-million-dollar revenue stream for these guys. They didn't even know they had. Yeah. Increased adoption of analytics. You know, we always talk about becoming more data-driven. Analytics and embedding analytics is just one way to get closer to that. Embedding in Tableau into third-party applications, whiteboxing. I've seen Tableau visualizations. If you guys have seen the Viz Gallery out here outside of the Reef Room, many of these Vizes you have no idea that was created in Tableau. I mean, you could really create anything that you would like. And then also providing these analytics to wherever your clients may be. So our APIs and mobile apps allow you to do this. So those are the main 5 reasons why our clients are embedding analytics. Now, why would they embed Tableau? Why are you guys interested in embedding Tableau? You're at Tableau conference, so we know that you guys enjoy Tableau. So you know we have world-class analytics. Again, VizQL is our secret sauce. Nobody has been able to duplicate that. You can literally create any visualization that you want. Time to market, this is huge. Gordon and I, hopefully after this session, you guys will see that creating an embedded portal does not take a lot of time. We are going to show you just 3 key components, how to implement that and the code behind it, and what it would take to do. It's not a lot, guys. 4 main categories of this. We're going to walk you through all 3 of the main components, and you guys will see that the time to market is going to be very, very short. And last but not least is the self-service. Gordon just showed you Ask Data. That's going to be very popular. The embedded web authoring, we're seeing a huge demand of that from our clients. If you guys have a portal today that you're providing analytics to external clients, how are you supporting those dashboards? How many requests do you get to change a dashboard? Put that power back into your clients' hands and allow them to get the analytics that they would like. The embedded core technologies, we're going to talk about 4 of these. Single sign-on, we've hit on that several times today. Integration, we're talking about APIs. So we're providing you with the tools to automate and create these really robust solutions. Data and content security. And then SDLC, so the software development lifecycle. These are the main 4 pillars of an embedded project. The first 3 we are focusing on today. Any project that you undertake with Tableau will touch on all these first 3 pillars. Single sign-on, integration, and then data and content security. So again, we're going to build out today's support for single sign-on into Tableau, leveraging trusted authentication. Quick show of hands, who knows what trusted authentication is with Tableau? Excellent. So there's not many hands up, and that's great because the majority of you, as you go down this journey of embedding Tableau, will leverage trusted authentication. So I'm glad you're here. We're going to get a much lower level understanding of how this works. We're going to create a dynamic menu of Tableau content. So in Gordon's demo, he showed you those thumbnail images in the portal itself. So we're going to leverage the REST API to pull that information back from our Tableau server for that user who's been authorized to log into your application. And then lastly, we're going to embed Tableau dashboards into the portal itself. So that's the fun part. And we're going to leverage our JavaScript API to do that. And Gordon showed you a couple of examples. So let's get started and build our portal. And the first topic is single sign-on. And what we mean by this, and you guys probably already understand what single sign-on means, your user is going to navigate to your application, whether it's in a browser or wherever that may be. They're going to sign in with their username and password. Behind the scenes, you're also going to simultaneously create a session for that user on the Tableau server. So they don't know this is happening. It's done behind the scenes. So when they log in, they're able to open up that dashboard very seamlessly. They don't have to log in another time to view that content. We're leveraging trusted authentication. It is the most commonly used approach for single sign-on for embedded portals. And we'll find out why in just a moment. And Gordon and I, we're focused on the external use case. So you're providing analytics to people outside of your company. And those authentication mechanisms are multiple ways to create those. So trusted authentication is very, very flexible. But you don't have to only use trusted authentication. We also integrate with third-party tools like SAML and OpenID Connect. If you guys already leverage that, then that's great. You can just plug that up to your Tableau server and provide that experience as well. And then more for an internal use case, a lot of you may use Active Directory. Very simple way to provide that single sign-on experience. And again, just a few more points about trusted authentication and why we see it so much in the external world. It's a lightweight, versatile Tableau technology, so we created it at Tableau, and it allows you to achieve single sign-on. It happens over a simple HTTP post request. And it leverages your authentication, so it's very flexible. It doesn't matter how you architected and coded your authentication mechanism into that portal, you can leverage trusted authentication to provide that seamless experience for the Tableau content. A couple of quick tips. Only one trusted ticket is really needed per user session. This will make a lot more sense later, but basically, a ticket is the same as a login. And once you redeem that ticket to view some type of content on the server, a session is created for that user. So you only have to create that session one time. It will be available to that user until they either close their browser or log out. So keep that in mind. And one of the techniques that we see a lot of our clients leveraging today is this ability to pre-redeem a trusted ticket to speed up the viz access. So you can create a simple one-by-one pixel viz that you can pull back using our API and create a PNG image. And you're caching in that token so that user now has a session on the server right ahead of time. So as soon as they log into the application, they now have a session. So you don't have to worry about it from that point forward. Just start showing those dashboards as soon as they click on them. It's just a single sign-on experience. And I am going to back up one slide here and show you how trusted authentication is going to work. If I can do my Alt-Tab here as well, Gordon. So this is the code that is driving that Industrix portal that Gordon demoed earlier. We have a simple flag in here that turns off trusted authentication. Simply for demo purposes, we have got this set to false. So we are not using trusted authentication for this example. So that experience, if I run this code, you'll see we're prompted for a sign-on into the Tableau server. This is not the experience you're going to want to provide to your clients. And they can do that, and if they log in, then they're signed in, they've got a session, they won't have to do that again. We really want to avoid that second prompt. So how do you get a trusted ticket? So it's a very simple process to set up, and again, this is one of the reasons why trusted authentication is so valuable and so important to our external clients. You are simply providing access to your clients and establishing trust between your application and the Tableau server. So there's a configuration you need to take care of before you set this up. It's a simple couple of commands that you would run to establish that trust. And then it's simply sending a few parameters to your Tableau server to grab that ticket. And what you would have to do, there's 3 parameters that you can send to a required, that is the Tableau server name, and the user who is logged into your application. And you can also, if you guys are leveraging Tableau sites for multi-tenancy, you can send the site name as well. So that request is sent to the Tableau server and parsed by your code. It's a simple HTTP post request. So you can see we've got maybe 30, 40 lines of code to do this. You're sending that post, parsing the response back, and pulling out that token. And once you have the token and the application code, you're going to basically plug that token into the URL for the content that that user is trying to access. And you can see in the URL that we're building out here where the trusted ticket is being plugged into, and then that session is created on the Tableau server. So it's a very simple process to get this set up. So now if I set my flag back to true, and refresh my browser, our dashboard renders seamlessly. So that's the experience you're trying to provide, and it's super simple to set this up with trusted authentication, maybe 30, 40, 50 lines of code to get this set up, and that's why it is so popular. Okay. So now, the second section, single sign-on taken care of. You guys understand trusted authentication now. Building a dynamic content menu with our REST API. So you guys, most of you are developers. You know what a REST API is. It's a lightweight architecture where API calls or endpoints are actually, they look like URLs because they are URLs. They allow you to invoke basic HTTP operations. So you can get things from your Tableau server, you can push things up to your Tableau server, you can delete things, whatever that may be. The Tableau server REST API provides you with the ability to automate the programmatically the administration tasks on your Tableau server. So if you have a Tableau server administrator, all those tasks that that person may manually do, you can automate programmatically with the REST API. But not only can you automate, you can also use that for a source of rich runtime information. So we already know what users can see on the Tableau server and what dashboards they have access to. You can pull those back as PNG images. And so that's how we're going to build out this dynamic menu. So a few more points on the REST API. You can create sites and projects. These are the most common things that our users are going to do. And you guys being embedded, you're going to look into these as well. So automating the onboarding of your users. So when you have an embedded application and you're leveraging Tableau, you want to put the hooks into that application when you authenticate a new user in. They also are simultaneously brought into the Tableau server environment and permissioned accordingly. So you'll use the REST API for that. Managing permissions for those users, whether it's on dashboards or data sources. Promoting content between the different environments, so software development lifecycle, moving between dev, test, and production. And then, of course, building a dynamic UI. We're going to retrieve these thumbnails for building this dynamic content menu, and as Gordon showed you in the demo earlier, you also have the ability to see what types of permissions these users have on the server. So if they have web authoring capabilities, you may want to expose embedded web authoring into your application. It is extremely popular with our embedded clients to provide this self-service functionality for their clients. All right, I'm going to show you in this Industrix code what we've done to create that dynamic menu. And I got to tell you, it's not a lot of code, and you are going to be wowed by the simplicity of this. If I can do it, you can do it, I can guarantee you. All right. First lesson with the REST API. You have to establish who the user is in your application and get a token for that user. You're going to use that token to issue any commands to the REST API for that particular user. And the reason why you have to do that is different users have different roles. Those roles will determine what you can do using the REST API. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create a simple XML package that we're going to post up to the Tableau server. It's going to include the username, the Tableau server name, and then the site, and then the password for that user. And we'll use that token for all API requests going forward. So it's a simple XML string that we're going to post. We'll simply parse that. So we're sending this login to this sign-in endpoint of the Tableau REST API. We're going to parse that response back and pull out that token. All requests from that point forward will leverage that token. So now that we have a token, we're going to leverage our API to eventually pull back this content. But before we get started, we need to talk about a couple of things. If you are an API developer, you may be able to just go to tableau.com, do a quick Google search for REST API reference, and start writing your code. That's great, no problem. But we also have helper libraries out there, and these helper libraries have been written to really, as a wrapper around a lot of these very common API commands. So instead of having to manually log in one time, another command to do another thing, these helper libraries will wrap those together so in one function you can accomplish multiple tasks. So Tableau has a Tableau Server Client library. We call it TSC. It's a helper library that encompasses the REST API. It will help speed up your development process using our REST API. And we also have a tool that was written by one of our sales engineers on the Embedded Analytics team. His name is Brian Howe. He's a very sharp guy. He wrote a tool called Tableau Tools. It's also a helper library that will help speed up your development process as well. So we encourage you guys to look into those as well. Now for this example, we've written a library specifically for this application. It's a very simple one. All we're doing is logging in, grabbing a token for that user, and we're going to issue a command now that we have a token to see what workbooks this user has access to. So you can see in this line of code, we're getting the workbooks by user. So that's the function that we created. Once we have those workbooks, we then loop through to see what views are in those workbooks. Once we have that information, we're actually creating a PNG image using the API and writing that out to disk. So we're looking at maybe 40 lines of code here. All right, so now that we have these images written out and created on our server, all we have to do is loop through and create our menu. So I'm not a Java developer. This code was written in Java. It's a Tomcat server behind the scenes. If you guys are Java developers, great. I need to point out that our APIs are completely agnostic. It doesn't matter if you're writing this in React, you can write it in Django, whatever your technology stack is, you can leverage the APIs. The commands will be the same, the code will just look a little bit different. So we're just looping through for that user and building out this content. You can see from the different tags here, we're just creating a link to each one of those PNG images. And just to show you again what that looks like, if I go back to our self-service analytics tab in our Industrix portal, you can see the 5 dashboards that this user, Joe, has access to. And the reason why we say it's dynamic is you write the code once, and whoever, depending on who it is that's logged into your application, their menu will be, it'll look a little different depending on what access they have to this Tableau content. Okay? So a couple of tips for you. Vises that use row-level security will result in a generic thumbnail image. If you've seen implemented row-level security on a data source, if you have a dashboard that uses that, you have a gray silhouette of looks like a person. You don't have to use that image. You can actually bring down high-res graphics, cache them and resize, and use those to build out your dynamic menu as well. Okay, so now you're SSO experts with trusted authentication. You know how to use the REST API to build a dynamic portal. Gordon is going to come back up and show us how to use the JavaScript API to actually embed that dashboard into the application.
Cool. Thank you, Ron.
I guess
Wow, we have been running. I think it's okay if we pause for a second and catch our breath. Let's just kind of review very briefly what we've seen here. First of all, Ron showed us how to achieve single sign-on. And although we looked at maybe 40 lines of code, just as with the REST API, there are libraries in lots of languages that let you fetch that trusted ticket in a single line of code because embedded Tableau is so pervasive. There's lots of great stuff out there to support your efforts there. And then we looked at the REST API, and we saw again how there are some fantastic libraries that will let you do the basics in just a handful of lines of code. So now you've seen that really in terms of time and in terms of the development that you'll actually do, it's really pretty easy. And that's a key point. Those are the benefits that Ron was highlighting earlier, the time to market, the self-service capability that you can include in your embedded Tableau portal. Okay, so let's now turn to what I think is kind of one of the more fun parts, and that's where we actually embed the visualization. that's where we get to put that really cool viz that you created in front of your customer or in front of your supplier, et cetera. So embedding Tableau dashboards with the Tableau JavaScript API. Let's go there. Again, the Tableau JavaScript API enables rich embedding. We saw that the JavaScript API lets us do two really important things. The first is we can control the behavior of the embedded viz. So it's not just about putting it in front of your user. If you so choose, you can then add those kinds of bells and whistles. We looked at a couple of examples that create a much richer experience for your users as they interact with that visualization. So in our example, we saw how when a user clicked on the export button, first of all, we exposed a little bit of a form that the Industrix developer created. Again, kind of distinguish here between what is Tableau and what has been created using the Tableau tools. And then when the user clicks submit, they get to download the data, and we said, boy, does that make users happy. So that's a nice kind of way you can enrich the user experience around a visualization in embedded viz. Now, equally powerful is the ability to respond to events. And an event is just any user interaction with the visualization that you've embedded. So a user clicks on a mark, you get to know that the user clicked on a mark. A user resizes the viz, you get to know that the user resized the viz, and then takes some kind of action in response. So that's a very powerful capability, and what we saw was, again, a user selects a mark, and we're notified, and we do something. In the example during the demo, we clicked on a mark, that caused the menu to update, and then we were able to change the data, post it back, and refresh the viz. So very, very, very cool capabilities. In fact, like the REST API, there really pretty much isn't anything that you can't do with the JavaScript API. And just a kind of a little teaser, we are even adding substantially more capability to the Tableau JavaScript API. There will be a major rewrite of it coming up in 2020. And while it's good today, it is even going to be a whole lot better in the very near future. So we're all looking forward to that. It's going to be a very, very cool step forward in embedded Tableau. So how do you actually embed a visualization using the Tableau JavaScript API? Well, first, of course, we do have to reference the library. The library is already on your Tableau server, so you do not have to install anything. And this is true for everything that we're talking about today. When you have Tableau server installed, you have all the technologies you need for embedded Tableau. So all you really need to do to embed Tableau is to reference the JavaScript library on your page. You are now good to go and to start using it. When it comes to actually embedding a visualization, you can do it in one line of code, and you're looking at that line of code on the screen. Now, it is typically broken up into a few more lines of code for readability, but we've been talking in terms of maybe a couple dozen lines of code. If your goal is to create an embedded Tableau portal and the end result is to embed the viz, you're done after you write that line of code. You don't have to add all those bells and whistles. So it's really quite simple. What we're looking at here, let's just kind of talk about what's here. You'll notice that in the arguments to this function, we've got three things. We have a variable that represents a div somewhere on your HTML page where you want the viz to appear. And a div is just a standard HTML element for organizing your page's content. You'll notice we have a URL. Well, that's no surprise because what we are sharing is content that has been published to Tableau server, so naturally we need a URL to point to the specific content, the specific viz, and then a whole bunch of really cool options that you can include when you initialize that embedded visualization. So this is what it might look like if you were to break it out into a few lines of code. So first of all, we do have to get a reference to the div, and a little bit of a pro tip here. Many people use jQuery to simplify their interaction between the JavaScript they write and the HTML page where that JavaScript runs. You don't want to use jQuery to get a pointer to your div. You want to use just good old get element by ID. I do not know why, but sometimes you get some interesting different types of ordering of elements on the page if you use jQuery for this purpose. If you don't know what jQuery is, don't worry, because you don't need it. But a lot of people use it, so I just want to mention that. Here is our URL. And I'm sorry, was there someone had oh, I thought someone had a hand up. OK. And then finally, we have some options here. Notice that, remember we had this whole thing very nicely white labeled? Well, you can hide the tabs. You can hide everything about a viz that you typically see in Tableau Server. You can take it completely out of the Tableau Server environment and make it 100% a citizen of your embedded Tableau portal. And then there is this super cool onFirst interactive function. This is an event. And basically, when the visualization that you have embedded is available to the user for interaction, so onFirst interaction, you can have a little bit of code that gets called. And then you can do whatever you want. Now, for instance, we know we can programmatically filter a viz. Maybe we would choose to filter it at that point. Maybe, as you saw in the portal, we had custom buttons that appeared depending on the viz the user clicked on. We could, in our onFirst interactive event, and that's what we were doing here just a minute ago, is we could kind of tweak the user interface around the viz based on the viz that the user had selected to see. So you get all this capability to occur right after the visualization has loaded. And then finally, right there at the bottom is that single line of code that we looked at just a moment ago. So it's very straightforward to embed a viz using the JS API. And hopefully you're getting the sense that it's been easy pretty much to do all of this stuff, really. We did talk about embedded Tableau and web editing. That is a really powerful capability. And we now have added to that embedded Ask Data. And that is an incredible self-service story. In fact, I should even add that because of web editing, how many people have heard of the really cool Explain Data feature in Tableau, where we now have the AI, and if a user clicks on a particular mark and they kind of don't know why it's an outlier, Explain Data will go figure it out. They'll go look at the raw data and they'll come up with some theories about why is this an outlier, and they'll give you a little viz that shows all of that. Well, of course you get that in embedded Tableau because you have web editing. That puts you into an interactive design mode with the viz, and you can use Explain Data along with Ask Data along with web edit in your embedded Tableau portal. Okay, let's dive into this last bit of integration here. And I'm going to try to get my Alt-Tab down this time a little bit better. Here we go over back to Eclipse. And I do want to, by the way, let me just come back up to our first area to look at here. I do want to mention briefly, Ron and I understand we are running today. Hopefully that was a cute introduction because we are running to create our masterpiece here. And it is hard when you're in a big room to follow detailed code on a screen and so forth. So I do want to emphasize that A, we're live streaming. This is being recorded. You can come back, you can review it, and do that at your leisure. And all of the code that you see here, it's Java. You have to pick a language. We're language agnostic, but you have to pick a language to look at for examples. We will provide all of this code to you, a complete portal, really, available for download. So you can then look at the examples in a little bit more detail. And you might have noticed also as we go through this that, let's just jump down here, you'll notice in the code that we have a whole bunch of comments there, kind of a step-by-step for how to do it. So when you go to the section that Ron showed, you'll see exactly step-by-step, how did we get those thumbnails, how do you do it, which library were we using, et cetera. So if you're not, and I wouldn't be if I were in your shoes, in your running shoes, I probably wouldn't capture every single thing we talk about today, so that's why we're going to make sure there are lots of resources available to you after the session. And least but not last, if you really want to dive into a conversation about embedded Tableau, just get in touch with your Tableau representative. They'll get you connected to Ron, myself, or a member of the embedded team, and we can talk in more detail about your use case. Okay, so about embedding that viz. We did say, first of all, of course, we need to say where on the page is that viz going to go. And we do that by just taking an HTML div. We give it some sort of an ID so that we can then reference it in our JavaScript code. Easy enough. And then we embed the viz. Now, that's kind of a good question. Where do you put your code to embed the viz? Well, that's typically done, and don't worry if this isn't a familiar term, but there's something called the body onload event in the life of a web page. And basically, once the HTML rendering has been kind of taken care of, the body of the document has been loaded, that's when you kick off the initialization of the viz. Because the HTML has kind of had to figure out for itself, oh yeah, that person defined a a div, that's where it goes, okay, it's set, now we're ready to put the viz there. If you are using, and this is an example of jQuery, it's just, again, an alternative way of tying JavaScript and HTML together, you would put it in the document.ready function. So that's where you kind of put that stuff. And then we did say that, you have to get a pointer to the viz. You do want to have typically some options. Here we're turning off the toolbar. We're turning off the things that make it look like Tableau so that it looks more like it's ours. And then here we have onFirstInteractive. That points to a function down here. Remember, that is after the viz has loaded, you get to do whatever you want in response to the fact that has just happened. And what we do now is, and this is a best practice, there are typically some page level variables you will want to initialize there because you're likely to use them as you do other things with the viz. And that's happening here. And this is some code for you. You'll get this to download. Notice in this very simple example, if we detect that this particular viz that the user has clicked on was published out of a workbook and more than one viz was kind of published together, we detect that. And that lets us put up a little button there so that the user can toggle back and forth between the vizes quickly and easily. And those are the kinds of things you can do just to make it a little bit nicer for your users. And we kind of go through that here in our onFirstInteractive event handler. You can do absolutely anything you want. And that's just a little bit of button code there that we then dynamically use to add buttons to the user interface. Now, we did say that not only can you drive a viz behavior, but you can respond to events. Well, if we're going to respond to events, we need what? An event listener, right? Okay, so anybody, I wish we had some swag to throw out there. A t-shirt. Who wants to guess where you'd probably define an event handler? Nobody's going to say anything if we don't have t-shirts to give out. How about in onFirstInteractive, right? Because the viz has been loaded. We know all's good with that. Now let's register our event handler. So that's going to happen here. So just a little bit farther down here in a single line of code, we are detecting when a user has clicked on a mark. That's how we were able to click on that mark and then say, oh, the user clicked here. Let's go change the little drop-down menu in that write-back use case. One line of code. Now, what do? That's what we do with the event. We specify a function, and here is a very trivial example. We just basically count the number of, we just count the number of marks. So if there was indeed a mark clicked on, we report back on how many were clicked. But this is really a key point about events, is that you get back a bunch of useful data. So actually, if I still have it loaded, it might be worth, I didn't happen to show this here, and I think it is worth just 2 seconds. Let's log in. I mean, you do want to see the 3 key components again, right? Logging in the menu, and so we'll navigate through that. What we're referring to here, I didn't actually show this during the demo, but I think it really is important because we did show how you obviously clicked on something, we changed the menu, but we're going to look at a slightly different example here. Let's just arbitrarily select these marks, and wow, look at what happened at the top. You selected 5 orders. Okay, so our event handler kicked in. We know what the user did, but more important, look at that we got all of the data associated specifically with what the user clicked on. So you could take that data and pipe it to some other part of your application. Maybe that causes another part of your page to refresh, or a different set of customer data to load, et cetera. It's that tight coupling, that tight integration between the viz and your application, that back and forth. You drive the viz. So a user does something in an area of your app that causes the viz to change. A user does something with the viz that causes a different part of your application to update. It's important to have that kind of capability to really create a very rich and powerful embedded Tableau portal. So that's what we're talking about in terms of event handlers, and they are part of, naturally, the JavaScript API. So we talked about that, and then Ron, if you're actually, I got to tell you, Ron's a pretty good coder. How complicated would it be to like, that how in Tableau you can get a download dialog box and then get a PDF? What would that take to implement?
One line of code. One
line? Whew. Let's see if Ron's right. I think he is. He's usually right. That's why Ron, by the way, is my favorite of the Duggar triplets. I'm counting myself in. I shouldn't say it with John in the room. I shouldn't say, John, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that Ron's my favorite of the Duggar triplets, but he is. No, okay. So that's it. You want to trigger the PDF download, single line of code. By the way, that's one of those variables that we initialize, right? Because we're going to keep coming back to it over and over again and reusing it. That best practice is documented here in the code. But that's it. Going to pass the baton back one more time to Ron as we kind of wrap up, and if we have time, hopefully, to maybe take a couple of questions. For my part, I just want to say thank you very much. We are here only because you are here, and it's awesome that you chose today to come and take a look at how to build a custom portal. Hopefully, you've gotten some good ideas, you're a little bit inspired, and Ron is going to wrap up for us.
Thank you, Gordon. Do you all feel smarter? Yeah. Single sign-on, REST API, JavaScript API, this is easy stuff. Okay, to wrap up, we've got a few more slides to go through. Data and content security, we will touch on this briefly. We've got 8 minutes left. What we're talking about is what content do I have access to once I authenticate into the application, and what actions can I perform. And this is all talking about Tableau server content security. So these are the permissions that you set up on the content that you publish up to the Tableau server, whether it's dashboards or data sources. Data security is above and beyond permissions. This is talking about what data can I see in those data sources. So we call this row-level security. We have got this very well documented. We have a blog post that is written and maintained by one of our sales engineers, again, Bryant Howell. It's called tableauandbehold.com. That blog post was created for this use case of providing analytics in an embedded way. If you have questions about, if you guys go down the path of creating an embedded portal and run into an issue or a question, feel free to reach out to us. We have a great community forum. But also, we have a lot of resources out there. Tableauandbehold.com is a great site. Every blog post on there is addressing some type of an embedded question. So you always want to make sure that your data sources are secure and you're providing this row-level security in a very robust way. It's important to note, too, that these security settings that you create on the Tableau server, on the dashboards and those data sources, they are enforced in an embedded scenario. So there's nothing special you have to do to allow that to trickle down into the application. Once you have it set up, it's just there. And then lastly, the SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. You guys have many ways that you would implement this. We're not going to get into that. Just know that you would leverage the Tableau REST API to pull that content down, manipulate it in whatever way you need to, and then push it back up to whatever environment that you may need. So you're leveraging the REST API for that. And we have to put a plug-in to our developer program. This has really become a very great resource for our developer users such as yourselves. We have a lot of free tools out there, early API access. If anything changes to the APIs, you'll be the first ones to know. And again, the community. If you're not a member of the Tableau community, sign up, create an account. It is so much information out there. If you have questions, you can post a question and somebody's just waiting to answer that for you. Not just Tableau employees, it's people just like you as well. And we have a great, great community. We have a lot of other data dev resources as well. Tableau Github, if you Google search Tableau Github, you'll see a ton of resources. We've got a lot of great code examples. Most of them are written in either Java or Python, but I believe we have other ones that are coming out as well. The developer tools. And then, of course, Tableau on YouTube as well. These sessions at Tableau Conference, there's no way that you can go to all the sessions that you would like. They will be recorded and pushed out to YouTube. So afterwards, you get home, are able to digest some of the information that you've got. Go out to YouTube and check out some of the sessions that you weren't able to attend. And then last but not least, I know you get pounded by this every session. Fill out the survey. This is very, very important, guys. Give us your feedback. Let us know what you like, what you may want to see different or added to these sessions. We take this serious. Let us know what you'd like to see, and we'll incorporate that into possibly next year's sessions as well. And one last plug, the Embedded Analytics team, which Gordon and I are on, we have a cabana in Data Village to the left side of the data pool. Come and see us. All the team will be there if you have other questions. We have a few minutes after this class for Q&A. But come see us at the cabana. We have a lot more time to talk with you. Love to talk with you. Appreciate you guys coming out. So we do, if you guys want to stick around, we do have 5 minutes for some Q&A. If you want to stick around, feel free to ask a few questions.
So once we have a dashboard that we've embedded into our internet or somewhere, what kind of licensing would be needed by the viewers? I said, like, once we have a dashboard build that we have embedded into our, say, for example, our intranet, what kind of licensing would be needed for the viewers? Do they need an Explorer license or just a viewers license would be good enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can take that one. The licensing is entirely up to you. So you can go anywhere from a viewer to all the way up to an Explorer creator. And I will add, just as by way of a little bit of plug, for external use cases where the server will be dedicated to your external use case, the pricing is also a little bit more advantageous. It's less expensive, actually, than the Tableau server you would buy for internal use. So the license roles are the same. They're a little bit less expensive when it's for a dedicated purpose.
Fortunately, our Tableau.
And the question is, per user, and you still have the choice to go with what we call subscription or named users, or with what we also refer to as our core model, where you basically license Tableau to run on so many cores, and then you kind of get as much as you possibly can out of it with as many users. You just kind of run the numbers and decide which one is going to be more advantageous for you.
They wanted this requirement coming there. They wanted to embed the view in the application.
Okay.
So PII is the issue?
Yeah.
So is there any way you can anonymize that?
Which works for our clients. So how do we find this information? Which way it works for us? The way you said, figure out which way.
Okay. So how do we find out which licensing model is going to be more advantageous? This is probably not the best answer, but I'm being a little bit more on the technical side. I tend to punt that one to some of our sales reps in terms of a conversation because I don't know how clearly we publish the pricing myself on the web. Yeah, so.
For like my organizations, we have account manager on Tableau who works with us. They are the ones who typically help us decide those options.
Yeah, and this woman is sharing with us that she has a Tableau account, and if you do not have a Tableau account manager, we can get you one.
No, we do.
You do.
We work with a lot of high-level folks. I mean,
Okay.
I had dinner yesterday with Scott and with Francois and everyone.
Oh, okay,
The problem
yeah.
is they are at a so high level.
Oh,
The
okay.
sales guys we work with are at a global level.
Yeah.
So they're so focused on millions of dollars of
Right.
revenue. So sometimes we are not getting the nuances. We are all working on public sector. So a lot of the state governments and the federal governments, especially for some of these departments, they don't have a lot of funding. So we really have to be creative
Right,
on what we
yeah.
can offer them. So that's where I think finding out information about how do we slice and dice, at least advise the client what works for them, because of the sales guys, they always think about how big of the sale they can make this quarter.
Sure.
So their focus is so much on that. So I'm come from technical background.
Yeah.
15-person user group. That would be great. We could do like a portal for that, like our key customer management.
Right. Yeah.
15 people. Like, how can we get them one sign-on for the whole group rather than having to get
Yeah.
So you said the code will be available somewhere?
Yeah, the code will be available, and there's going to be last year they did it via a public Dropbox folder. I don't know what the URL is going to be yet, but you should, as an attendee, get a link to. So,
Okay, I will figure it out.
yeah,
But it's nice that it's available somewhere.
awesome. Thank you for attending. Yeah. Hey, hi, Donna.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, is everything applicable to online as to server?
Is everything applicable to online? That's a great question, because the one thing online doesn't support is trusted tickets, because you have to configure the server to trust the machine that sends that post request to get the ticket, and because that's a server that services, we can't. And trusted tickets is a very common way to do SSO, but if you have support for SAML or OpenID Connect, okay, so you could use Tableau Online. Yeah.
Second question, if we wanted, so I know, and this might be for my account rep, but I know that there's like consulting hours and tech hours that we can get.
Yep.
Is there resources like you that could help someone like me?
Yes, absolutely.
Something?
Yeah.
That
So,
is something you guys do?
yes, and we both do it internally, and then we have kind of a set of top-tier partners who can do that as well. And sometimes we do it together.
Can I coordinate that through my rep?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Donna. And I think, 5 seconds. I think the mic's going to turn the mic off. I think we have to kind of wrap up, but we